It's time to spot all of the differences in The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 2. I have my tea. Let's go. Right off the bat, we are in Indonesia, which never happened in the game. Obviously, we play as Joel, so that's our point of view character. This is a totally different scenario, kind of like the intro to episode 1. The beauty of the TV medium versus the game medium is that we don't have to stay in Joel's point of view, and we're seeing the fruits of that here, where we are able to see what would happen probably across the globe. This lady has been basically kidnapped by the government, but in a way of like, hey, we need your help, brought to this facility, and you have the wrong person. And they're like, well, you're good at mushrooms, right? I'm paraphrasing clearly, but nonetheless, she's a scientist. They bring her in and she's like, why have you used this thing? This is for humans. And they're like, well, this was a sample taken from humans. And she's like, mushrooms can't survive in humans. I'm gonna have to put something over the screen right there. There's naked people. All of this didn't happen in the game. Now, is it background that could have happened in the game and is easily said to have happened in the game? Yes, absolutely. But it did not happen. None of this happened at all whatsoever. So it's a cool little backstory. Again, just like the intro for episode 1. I don't think that they continue these all through the series, but I was actually kind of hoping. I remember when I watched this the first time, I was hoping to see this kind of occur for the rest of it. I think that it's fascinating to see the beginning of any apocalypse, and we never spend enough time in that. So this is pretty cool. Oh, this is something we definitely didn't see in the game. Scientists and doctors really trying to see what this is. And I'm not just talking about the beginning of the apocalypse, like really truly digging into it, because that's going to be so important later in the series for Ellie and, you know, what they're trying to do with her. So this is a really cool addition. 100% think that had they continued to go this direction of expanding the world, that this would have been one of the best series on earth, to be honest. The game still is, but the show, this isn't a difference. It's still a difference technically. This whole scene is, but I just was excited that she also has tea like me, because I was just about to pour mine.
Kapan ini terjadinya, Pak?
Kurang lebih 30 jam yang lalu, Bu.
This is important. A flour and grain factory on the west side of the city. So this was another change that they made. I don't think there was anything about bread in the game that we could call out whatsoever that I can remember. If anybody sees differently, let me know. But there's nothing about grain in the game. But that's very important in the show because that's how they say that it was spread. You can see pancakes, biscuits, and all kinds of stuff mentioned in the first episode. So they're continuing on this. This is going to be very relevant again for how hopeless this whole situation has been for 20 years and how much potential Ellie really has to save the world. I think that this backstory is really, really important because she's basically like, there is no hope whatsoever. In the game, we didn't necessarily have that as strongly. So I think that this is a very, very good change. You can tell from this and some of the other points that they made in episode 1 that they want to really heavily define some of these points, like Joel's catalyst for going outside of the quarantine zone. Everything that they're doing needs to have these very crisp edges that they didn't really as much in the game, because in the game they can kind of propel you forward through means of gameplay, and with a show they need to really be capturing your attention at all times a little bit more than a game in terms of the story itself. So the story, you can tell, needs to have these really crisp edges, and that's what they're doing here. Another thing that this is really solidifying, as she says there is no vaccine, is that actually Ellie's predicament and the whole situation surrounding her, it's pretty hopeless. And so that gives the audience a thought, if they're really paying attention, that this might not even work, that the chances of it working to take Ellie all the way on this journey and any surgery done to her and any vaccine made from her might not even work, because people back the top scientists in the world that they brought in said, hey, there's no vaccine that can be made. So the chances are very, very slim that it would work, even more so in the show than the game. And I think that's an interesting change because they didn't really get into it that much. You kind of just had to consider whether it would or not, and we don't really have any sort of percentage there. Not that we do here either, but it's an interesting change because it really kind of solidifies for you that this is not something that may work at all. Whereas in the game, it seems more of a sure thing just by the way that we kind of have it from the Firefly's perspective in 2 specifically. And in 1, we only have it from Joel's perspective where we're like, we don't particularly care. So this is a cool little segue into 2 a little bit, but also just to, again, solidify those edges. Okay, so this is a cool change. We don't really sleep in games very often, as you can imagine. They're showing that in the show. Once again, a media adaptation. This is a pro of having a show. You can kind of show that a little bit more. Now, what's cool about that is they take advantage of it to show them being suspicious of Ellie, which is something that we didn't necessarily have in the game as much. It happened as we're going through the game. So I think this is a good change. I think that they're doing really good storytelling so far in episode 2, and I'd like to continue to see it. This might actually be, I think these first episodes are probably some of my favorite, period. I think that they get worse and worse as time goes on. So I'm actually really happy with this so far in the second episode.
What was Marlene doing with an infected kid?
I'm not infected.
Okay, so this, I spoke way too soon. This is literally like while I was saying that I really was happy with this episode, and then I turned on the sound and I got really upset. Oh no. So the line delivery here is just again not Ellie at all whatsoever. I can see it being kind of Tess. Tess makes sense. Joel, I think, even kind of makes sense, but they're making her very again, way too standoffish for the Ellie that we know and love in the game, where it's not that she wasn't standoffish and suspicious. It just, in the game, she just felt, even when she was being really sassy, there was some sort of almost like naivety to it. There was a curiosity to it, and it doesn't feel like she's curious. And I noted that in episode 1 as well, where in the game, in kind of similar sections, she was asking a lot of questions, versus in this one, in the show, she's more demanding things and saying things. And I think something about that, taking away her natural inquisitiveness that a child would have, the childlike wonder, the childlike questions. And they're trying to make her childlike with the way that she's acting, but instead it comes across as, because the childlike would be covered in the questions, it comes off more as a prisoner. Like, I could imagine this as an adult prisoner more than a child, if that makes sense. So somebody who is being held against their will versus a child who is being taken care of, because normally, even if you don't super trust the adults, you're a kid and you're relying on the people around you a little bit more. And so she doesn't have that softness, that naivety, that inherent tiny bit of trust that any child would have, even in this world of adult figures. And yes, she would be grown up more in this world, but she shows that in the game over and over and over again. And they took it too far in the show, where it's just two completely different characters. And people might prefer this Ellie. It's not to say that either is right or wrong, but it is definitely 100% different than the game. And her line delivery here makes me, as a game obsessive fan, absolutely nuts. So just listen to a few of the lines here.
But I think what really impressed them was the fact that I didn't turn into a fucking monster.
See, I don't really get what they were going for here. I think they were just trying to make her, defiant, angsty teenager, but it comes off as just really mean. Do you see that and want to protect her? Because at the end of the season, we need to feel enough for Ellie that we see Joel's actions as defensible, right? That we want to save Ellie over all of humanity. And they've got to take us from here to there. And so some of this episode is clearly going to be me trying to figure out what some of these character differences are, but we're identifying where the differences are, even if I'm having trouble identifying what they are. Okay, so a conversation is happening here between Joel and Tess that doesn't happen at all in the game. They're talking about getting the battery. They're talking about whether they can trust Ellie and her bite. They don't believe it because, 20 years, they haven't seen anything like it. They haven't seen anyone be immune. So that's fair, right? They've been staying up all night watching her. In the game, this all happens what feels like in a matter of hours. It could obviously be longer than that, but we have multiple encounters to get to where this episode ends. So instead of those gameplay encounters where we're fighting zombies, we're having these conversations. And personally, Jerky's cool. They're showing a lot more of the realistic detail of what would be happening versus all of these encounters. Either one could be realistic, but of course our time in the game is going to be spent in gameplay. And so they're having more of these drawn out conversations, which I think is a plus for show as a medium versus game. I think this is a smart way to fill the time. But it does kind of feel like filling the time. You take me back, you get your battery. And so it's like there's so much repetition here, and I'm not sure how much it's actually serving the story. So I think I take everything I said back about this being one of my favorite episodes because it's pretty slow so far. In the game, we would be gaming. We'd be fighting. There's so many fun parts of the game here. We would be going through the office buildings. Yeah, they haven't seen a clicker yet, have they? The museum, which I think is going to come up. So it's still going. We've been going for minutes and minutes now, and nothing has happened. And all they're doing is talking and repeating themselves. This is absurd. Okay, this is one thing that you never see happen in the game that Ellie does that I actually think is a good change and shows her childlike wonder that we've been looking for. This is funny.
If she so much as twitches. Don't.
It shows her playfulness. So they are infusing small moments. Good enough. I'll take it. I think that they spent all of that time inside just talking for a few minutes and repeating themselves over and over to spend the money here because they did a beautiful job of showing these buildings, the apocalyptic office buildings, beautifully done. And they did have this in the game, but they had it at nighttime, and obviously they're going to be able to show something different in the show versus the game, and I think that they took the cinematics in certain areas like this to the next level. Once again, I don't really understand. I don't know if it is the actress for Ellie, Bella Ramsey, or if it's the writers, but I don't understand why every single line that Bella delivers is so angry. Just listen to this real quick. It could have been such a fun line delivery, just like a little bit sarcastic could have been fun, but instead it comes off as she could have just been cursing you out, basically. And I don't really understand why that tone is so necessary for every single line.
Well, I vote Longway just based on that limited information.
Like, why say it like that? It's just every single thing she said so far. Okay, so just to prove that I'm not crazy, and for reference, I have pulled up a VOD of a pretty succinct Last of Us playthrough that I can align with the show. And so in the game, you can hear Ellie asking questions, and you can hear her tone of voice. And I want you to hear the difference here because I feel like I've complained a lot and I haven't shown you, so here.
Jeez. What's wrong with its face?
That's what years of infection will do to you.
So what, are they blind?
Sort of. They see using sound.
Like bats?
So what, are they blind? Right? You can hear the inquisitive tone versus the angry tone. Okay, so super quick Easter eggs here. I'm not sure if they show this later, so I wanted to point it out. There's a wedding venue here, and that's an important thing in Financial District. Oh, let me pause. That's an important thing in Financial District. Her and Joel have a bonding moment. It's one of those optional conversations that you can have, which is a trophy as well for the game. So it's one of those important bonding moments for her and Joel. And so I don't know if they're going to do it in the series. I'm pretty sure they don't. So that's a cool little Easter egg, a difference for sure, because it's not clearly important to them in their relationship in the show. Another one is what we're looking at right now on the screen. There is a little giraffe stuffed animal, and not only would you think, oh, because of the big giraffe scene that everybody knows, the iconic giraffe scene from the game, but also if you are an obsessive fan and player like me, then you know that the giraffe plushies are also in the game. It's not just the giraffes at the end of the game, but there are plushies that you can find throughout the entire game. I think we counted somewhere between 5 and 10. There might have been more than that. I have screenshots from our last playthrough where we went through in detail. The stuffed animals are everywhere, and this is a cool little Easter egg. Not a difference, an Easter egg. I said I would call out a few of those as well. Okay, so this part right here, Tess is walking down the road and asking Ellie how she got bitten. This plays out very similarly to a part in the game. Again, the line delivery is super, super different. So I'm not going to show you that again because we've seen it. You don't need to hear it. Just know that it's different. However, a few other points that are different is you'll notice that they insert words in the dialogue to show things in the game that are important, which makes sense, right? But it's interesting that they didn't say it in the show too. She says, anyway, one of those what you call runners bit me. I know that's a little bit more relevant to the game because you want to be able to distinguish the different types of zombies a little bit more easily in the game than the show because you're playing the game. That's very important. But I found it interesting that they didn't have that tidbit in that part of the dialogue in the show. But also, where they focus on is the relationship between her and Tess. And so Tess gives her a compliment and she goes, "Oh, you got balls on you, kid." Versus here, they're having a much more almost hopeful, positive conversation. You can kind of see it in the dialogue here. Here, let me just play it for you.
With Marlene when you were bitten?
No. I went to her for help afterwards.
You can see, I told you she's going to be fine. You can already see a huge difference in the level of suspicion that they had. They'd had it a little bit up until here, but this is still very close to where we are in the show. You know, they've had a couple more, I think, encounters. They had to go through some clickers, and we had all of these down here. We had to scale the building. Oh yeah, we had all these guys. Then in here, we have all these runners, clickers, the lot. So, you know, we've spent more time together killing zombies, if you will. And it shows you have bonding in those moments already, and you're spending a lot more time with Tess. And they want you to, I think they're actually buying you time to spend with Tess before her inevitable demise by the end of this episode. And so while it's smart, I don't think that doing it just in dialogue is worthwhile. And again, remember when I said I think they were using all that dialogue to save up for the beautiful cinematic office buildings that they did? That's great and all, but zombies would also fulfill that like it did in the game. I wonder about some of these decisions that they made for the changes. And so we're seeing for the first time where I'm calling out that these differences between show and game were because of budget. And so that's a +1 on the gaming medium, is that they can animate these things, you know, as easy as they can animate anything else, versus in the show, you know, some of these, if they want to do it, you know, the right way, and they want to do it in these cool ways, and they want it to look really, really good, and they want it to be high quality, it's going to cost them. And so you can forgive a little bit of that. But throughout the show, one of the big complaints was how few zombies there were. And I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you feel differently. Would you rather have worse looking zombies or more far away zombies or darker, maybe combat sequences where there's more zombies? Would you like to see some of these shortcuts for it? Or would you rather see where they do it right, even if it's few? What do you think? Do you want more zombs within their budget? Because it makes me think a little bit, you know? So this is interesting. I think that they might actually be in a hotel right now. You can hear the piano being played, the keys. I think this is something we have later, really. So it's like they've moved some stuff around because they know they won't be able to get to it later in some of the later episodes. So again, they're providing time for Tess and the relationship that they want to build up with Tess. And so they've inserted some of these moments that she had just with Joel into the beginning, and some of these scenes that they had later into the beginning, because it gets so jam-packed with some of the other stories that they expanded. And we'll see that very quickly as we have entire episodes dedicated to side stuff. So I guess it's not so bad of a change. It's just a chronological change. Tess wouldn't have been in here with them. There's one in particular where you move the ladder. They have a conversation about the coffee. They're moving some of the set pieces settings to have different relationships with different people at different times. And again, I think they're trying to expand this Tess episode a little bit, because I remember when we left off at the city at the beginning of 1, I'm like, how are they even going to stretch this whole episode out for just this? And it makes sense. They're stretching it. Okay, so she finally asks questions here, but it seems very reluctant just because she's bored. She's like throwing and flipping her knife, and he asks her a question, so then she feels a little bit like socially obligated if she has any. Not that I think that this Ellie would have any social obligation whatsoever, or even game Ellie, to be fair. So she starts asking questions, but it's not like the inquisitive, excited nature, because it's not just inquisitive in the game. You can tell that she's excited to learn. It's that curiousness, mad curious. I care about the curious, all right? In this, it just seems like she's asking, here, you can kind of see, you can already picture her tone. You don't even need to hear it. She's like, where are you from? She says, like, very sarcastically, not like she actually wants to know. And then he goes, Tess is from Detroit. And she goes, I know, I go to school. And then it's like, so are you two like, and so again, she's just, how'd you end up in Boston? It feels like 20 questions. And so she's finally asking questions, but it's not even in a way that seems like childlike wonder, curiosity. And I just feel like I'm repeating myself. So just, this is a difference. They're having a moment without Tess. Tess went to go figure something out instead of having an encounter. Again, I feel like they're just saving money by having these scenes where they just talk and get to know each other rather than doing it when you can actually see stuff or have, God forbid, zombies. So they're really, really stretching out this episode by having, I guess, background material about them. But we've already seen some of Joel's background, so I don't know why that particularly matters. We're not really learning much about Ellie here. It's pretty much repetition of the same. So again, I'm really unsure what angle they're taking here. It's not the most compelling dialogue I've ever seen in my life. Honestly, I take back, I know I already took back what I said at the beginning, but I like 10 times take back what I said at the beginning because I feel like this episode in particular could fully lose the audience at this point. There is just nothing in this episode so far that makes you think, wow, I should keep watching. And we are almost halfway through the episode. So versus the game, again, we would have gone through like 9 million encounters already. Okay, so this is a huge lore difference between the show and the game. And I don't hate it. Okay, this one's kind of cool. So see how they're all kind of congregating down there and they roll together like that. So Ellie goes.
They're connected.
And Tess is like, yep. More than you know. The fungus also grows underground. Long fibers, some of them stretching over a mile. That's pretty interesting. That's not something that's mentioned in the game at all. The game, again, is spore focused. So kind of cool lore difference. They haven't played into that as much in the season as I would have expected. And I wonder if it's going to play into season 2 at all. I have only seen, as of right now, episode 1 of season 2. So I don't know. It feels like it's a change that they did without, I feel like they had to have thought behind it, but nothing has sprouted from it yet that I can see, if you will, to make it a necessary difference between the two. I don't know if it was just Neil waking up one morning and being like, I think that this would be a cooler lore than the spores, but it doesn't actually really do much other than that's the lore. It's there. There you go. I actually just remembered where it does come into play. And so some of it could have been for the cinematics of it, because spores obviously would require gas masks, which they didn't want to do. And on top of that, you will see in this episode, if you haven't already, exactly why they changed it. So we'll get there. And then I kind of don't like it. I respect it, but I don't like it because I think they might have changed this specifically for the cinematic effect. Part of the art of it. I guess I can't hate them for it. That makes sense for the art, I think. An interesting shift here. You're not immune from being ripped apart. So that's important because it's establishing that just because Ellie's not immune doesn't mean she's not in danger. And we see that in the game many times over, because at this point on your first playthrough, you probably killed Ellie, and we don't have that in the show. So that was a replacement for that in the show. So they did something cool here with this being a different medium as well in the storytelling. In the dialogue earlier, they said short way or long way. Short way is basically the death way. And now that long way was blocked, as we saw. And so they are now going into the museum, and they said short way. It pretty much foreshadowed what's to come and the danger of it. So I think that was a cool little shift, because we, again, to note the danger since we haven't had these encounters like we do in the game. So just a super quick visual change here. I know I have to have stuff on the screen so that, Max doesn't get me. So you might not be able to see it super well. So instead of having the spores, having all this interconnected fungi more so, is really showing in some of these scenes, because we do have this in the game too, where there's like all of these patches of the fungus. But I feel like we see it a little bit more in game 2 because we go into the depths a little bit more of some of these areas. And of course, there's like 5 more years of evolution, but we go into some of these areas that have remained even more untouched. And here, we didn't have as much of that in game 1, so it's just cool to see. It wasn't like this in the museum. There was a little bit, but not to this extent. And I think that they wanted to show this much more significantly because they're not doing the spores. And so again, some of those scenes where I was like, they're saving money because they're just doing repetitive dialogue. This is the payoff. So we didn't have as much of this in the museum. If you want to see the museum real quick, just for reference's sake, here's the museum. See, there's absolutely almost no growth. We're going up very similar stairs in the museum. Nothing, right? There's going to be a runner right around this corner. But see, nothing. No beautiful fungus webs. Okay, so quick change with the clicker. The introduction of the clicker, which for anyone who needs a quick refresher, is the zombie that can hear you but not see you. And Joel goes through and tells Ellie that right now. And Ellie's acting right here is really good. Bella's acting really scared, like that close your eyes, like I just need it to go away nightmare type scary. That was really, really good acting, really good directing there. It's not something that you necessarily see in the game. Actually, the first time that we encounter a clicker, are you ready? Completely different scenario, and it was actually back a little ways, because where are we right now? Yeah, it was back in the office buildings. We've already had multiple encounters with clickers at this point in the game, but where Ellie sees them first, we were actually kind of going over when she was asking those questions, if you remember. So we've actually kind of seen it right here.
You all right?
Okay, so just look at her face. So she's scared. She's a little traumatized right there. So kind of similar. They didn't build up to it as much, but they have another one really quickly after where we have to get a little creative here. I think that they gave her a little bit more of a child human-like reaction in the show versus the game. I'll give the show that, to be honest. Ellie doesn't even see the clickers in the museum because we have to go around a different direction, and that's where we meet Tess and Ellie, and then it's all runners in the room, if I'm remembering. Yeah, okay, so here's where it starts. Run up those stairs. Yeah, this is all runners. There's no clickers here. So yeah, the timing's just all different. They kind of combine all of these different parts. And I think for what they combined right there, I think they did a really good job. It just, as a gamer, you can tell that it's like a budget thing. And I need to forgive them it because I get it. So trying to appreciate the art that is the show here. They're playing to their disadvantage as much as they can, and I think they're doing a really good job with it there. Okay, where were we before I got so rudely interrupted by my neighbors a while ago? Spotting all of these differences is making me quickly realize that my superficial take on everything wasn't necessarily wrong, because all of the opinions when we're consuming art are technically valid. It's our experience with it, right? But when looking at it with an eye of trying to figure out what is being communicated, it's interesting to see and really consider the different mediums and why some of these decisions are being made. Are there things that I accept a little bit more because maybe the show needs more cinematography than the game that has the gameplay to lean on? Yes. But that doesn't mean that we can't consider what's best for the story and the characters overall, and to compare to the original characters and say, what is the essence of story and what is really being changed here, and what matters most that is being changed and what shouldn't be changed. And I think that this is becoming a lot bigger than I realized. So I hope that you're asking some of these same questions too, or that it's just at least entertaining for you. But I hope that somebody watching this is getting that out of it, because analyzing art is a beautiful thing, and all art is both objective and subjective, and we could get into depth about it, but this is cool. So I hope somebody else is getting that same thing out of it, I realized. And I was about to go into a deep rant right as music was starting to filter through my mic and would have rendered this completely impossible to listen to. So let's get back into it. So I wanted to real quick come back here. I've almost finished the museum scene, but Joel is actually reloading right here. and he's actually counting out his ammo, which is kind of like what you would be doing in the game when you're paying attention and counting it. So this is just a little Easter egg I wanted to point out. This isn't something that happens in the game, obviously, the way that it does, but I thought this was a cool little nod. Where there are differences is he steps on glass, which gets a clicker's attention, which isn't something that happens in the game. You also kind of see him and Ellie have this quick bonding moment where she has to trust him. Her life is completely in his hands in that moment. She doesn't have a weapon. She hasn't dealt with clickers before. She's terrified. There's one right beside her. Joel moves quickly towards her and obviously silently and protects her. And so this is a very important bonding moment. In the game, the bonding moments happen more outside of this type of, where we would call this an encounter gameplay. And so it was actually a really smart use of that time, because they could have just stuck to the action, but to make it a bonding moment was really good writing. Also, look at the freeze frame that we're on right now. This guy is freaky. Like, they did a really good job with the graphics, I just wanted to note. But above all, I want to show you the sound, because you know how in shows and all sorts of media, when there's gunfire or anything loud, it like is piercing and it just hurts, and you feel like you want to turn it down. Well, this one, it's not like that. It's at all. All of the loud sounds are more muffled. It's like everything's condensed really well. And so I just wanted to give props to the sound people here, because that is a difference from the game, I will say. The mix in the Last of Us games is really, really good. It's not one of those where I feel like it's super jarring. However, this is a noticeable difference from most media. The sound is superbly mixed to where I actually noticed how low it was. And I don't know, I guess if you're noticing sound, technically that might be a bad thing. So if anybody has comments on it, let me just show you what I'm talking about here. They made the gunfire, I feel like, a way lower tone, and I think that I don't know why. It was noticeable to me as somebody who has consumed a lot of media. Okay, so if you see this on the screen, Ellie actually got bit again, which definitely doesn't happen in the game. Funny enough, I actually noted in episode 1 of season 2, the same thing happened. She gets bit. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool reminder, which it is for that scenario. But this is actually like a confirmation for those who don't know the story, that she really was bit and that this really has happened. Because maybe, I don't know if TV show people are just more doubtful, because I know I would be doubtful too. In a game, I don't know. It's hard to remember the first time I played this because it's been so long, but they don't have that secondary confirmation that I can think of. We do have the DLC to go off of, so we will have that in a few episodes, but it's cool that they confirmed it this early. I wonder if they had like a focus group or feedback tell them, hey, we aren't really sure if we believe her. You know what? It could be because they did instill so much doubt to create like a little bit more tension, since there isn't the gamification of it. And I think that was a smart move on their part. So another good adaptation change that I think adds a little oomph. And funny enough, she also takes you off the scent and says, well, if it had to be one of us, anyone who knows what's coming? So from the museum to the Capitol, it's pretty much in line with the game almost entirely. The play-by-play of is it everything you were hoping for? Except that, he doesn't do... He's like, is it everything you were hoping for? He doesn't do the line read right. But nonetheless, it was almost word for word, and the view too. Nonetheless, we're here now at the Capitol, and I wanted to show a real quick cool change. It's like the prelim to the change that's about to come, because again, it's just the lore, but check this out. So the way that sorry, I'm getting real tired now. Did not mean for this to go on so late if it weren't for the neighbors. The way the little tendrils come up from the ground. Watch them curl around his fingers real quick. That is not something that exists in the game. Once again, it would be spores. So a neat change that's about to have its effect right now. Ooh, okay, so this is a pretty good line. They do it instead of one of my favorite lines, to be fair, kind of later on. I think this is just more of a focus in this version, but I do really like it. And this might be the first change that I actually wish was in the game because I like this line so much. It's very short and simple to the point, but
Save who you can save.
it's a good line. Save who you can save. It's the first one that if I could take anything from the show to the game so far, it would be that line. Because they have that meaning in a lot of the lines throughout the series, but this one is a bit of a shift in focus, and we'll see that thread and that change throughout. So even if I don't agree with the way that the writers did the series, it is well thought out in a lot of ways, and this thread does continue. Okay, so one of the biggest changes yet. Do you want to see the game? Because this isn't the game. You can see this, right? Okay, if you are just listening, tendrils. We'll come back to that. So in the game, right here, you can see this is soldiers, okay? Likely Fedra, but soldiers. And they could hear them coming, and so Tess held them off, and they shot her. So humans actually got Tess. Now, her bite would have gotten her regardless, but in the show, the Zombs get her. And I think that's an important change because, again, we haven't had as many encounters. So this allows us to have another zombie encounter, and it combines two important times together along with connecting this lore for a more cinematic experience and for a more horror-like experience. I like it. I think it's a good change in theory. Now, do I actually like watching this? Does anyone like watching this? No, this is horrific. This is the stuff of nightmares, truly. Regardless, I read something where someone said, like, this was somehow, I don't know, misogynistic or something. I don't know. I think it's a cool change. It's disgusting, but it's a cool change. The zombie gets its little tendrils out of its mouth and makes out with Tess to her death. She's probably happy for the explosion by the time it occurs. I just realized I think I forgot to do an outro for episode 2. I'm Mad Curious, and if you want to see more of the series, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.